Welcome to Packmates, a podcast about Magic the Gathering Limited, where we take a dive into the current limited format. The Packmates are a group of friends that love drafting, hanging out, and going to FNM to get the 3-0. I'm Ryan, the resident aggro expert.
I'm Andrew, the resident mid-range expert.
I'm Roby, the turtle guy, expert. Pass.
And we are the Packmates. Hey, Packmates.
Packmates we are.
Oh my god.
Almost got it. We're getting closer every week.
We are. We'll get there. You can always check out our socials. There'll be links in the description. There'll be a link for our Discord to join our Discord in the description too. It's a fun place to go. There's always helpful people in there. We can talk through, we can stream, we can do fun things. This week we're going to have an FNM recap, some signal talk, alpha of the week. And we're going to start it off with FNM, and we're going to start off with me. So I guess I'll introduce myself. Hey Ryan, why am I first? Oh, because I 3-0'd. Okay.
What place did you get, Ryan?
Second.
What place was it?
Second.
Oh, okay.
Ah.
So, yeah.
Second.
Not quite number one, right? There's an asterisk. There's an asterisk.
Due to limitations of the...
Yeah, it's an asterisk for sure.
Due to, I didn't drop a game. Like,
You just
6-0.
6-0.
But yeah, you can paint up a little asterisk if you want. That's fine. All right, so I had this Bant, which is white, green, blue deck. Mostly green, kind of splash in white, blue. Like, definitely hard base of green. My deck had 17 lands, 23 cards, but of those 23 cards, 19 of them costed 3 or less. And I'm throwing Elvish Hydromancer in with that, but it's really a 7-drop. So Elvish Hydromancer's the 3-mana 3/2. They can kick for 4 and it copies something, but I'm counting that as a 3 or less drop because I did play it for 3 sometimes. But yeah, so out of the 23 cards, 19 cost 3 or less. I was kind of like this domainy aggro deck, I guess, kind of, with value. I was just kind of like an all-arounder deck, I felt like. It's like I had some early game threats, I had some late game threats. To paint a quick picture of my deck, I had 2 Gaia's Mites, which are the domain buffs. Colossal Growth, which is +3/+3, or if you kick it, +4/+4 in trample and haste. Take up the shield. Those were my buff suites. And then I had a bunch of 2-drops, like I had the Knight of the Dawnsight, the 2/2 first striker. I had the Sunbathing Root Law, they can pay 4 to punt for domain. Vine Shaper Prodigy, which is basically the Organ Hoarder, the 2 green, and you can kick for 1 in a blue to look at the top 3 and draw. And the Ashopa Brawler. Pack one, picked one, and Tatyova, which is the one that when you play your 7th land, it becomes a 3/3. One of your lands becomes a 3/3 elemental creature. And then land creatures you control are flying. I had some Voda Sea Scavengers, sort of 3/2 domain. You look at the top X cards of your library and put one on top and the rest on bottom, where X is your domain. Just like all around, no real weak spots. Like my worst card was probably Pixie Illusionist, the 1/1 that you can tap and fix a color. And that was just in there out of necessity because my mana base was kind of bad. My top end stuff, I had Denitha, 4/4 first strike vigilance, lifelink, which was super good, and Elfane Worm, as well as which is the 5/4 trample vigi, Timeless Lotus that you can tap for Wooburg, and Jodas Codex that draws you cards for and costs less for your domain.
It's a pretty aggressive curve. Did you feel like you had really just kind of aggressed your opponents more, or was it just in the long game that you kind of
Looked like an aggro deck for sure.
Yeah, it kind of looks like one, but like it kind of felt, it felt more mid-range.
Yeah,
okay.
It's not a late game deck for sure.
No.
I think the Codex and stuff can make it go like into the late game, but like it can't compete with
like
the
big
truly late game
Yeah.
decks,
Yeah.
right? But it can get over some of those decks.
Yeah,
and around
you can
them.
go under them too,
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah. You can get them before they get to 7 for sure with this deck. It kind of just felt like a well-positioned deck in the meta. I did only have 2 pieces of removal, a Ruining Shot that destroys a tap creature, and a Terra Sunder.
Mm-hmm.
And I never drew the Terra Sunder all night, only the Ruining Shot, but like it felt fine. I didn't really need it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was using a lot of buffs as removal too.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah, did you ever have to use your buffs defensively, or it's just like an extra form of, okay, this creature just attacks this and trades, or you get an up trade?
I did have to use it defensively, like maybe like once, but like I never felt scared of losing most of the time.
Mhm.
Like I was mostly the aggressor, and then the buffs would kind of just lead to like a blowout usually.
When you were drafting, and so you got did you get the Ivy relatively early?
Yeah, so I had an Ivy, which is the 2/1 flyer for a green blue, and whenever a player casts a spell that targets only a single creature, you can copy it and target Ivy with the copy.
Yeah. Did that influence your picks when you were taking Gaia's Mites and Colossal Growths, like thinking like, ooh, I can get some extra value out of that?
A little bit, yeah. Like I got Tatiova, pack 1, pick 1, and then I got Ivy, pack 1, pick 2. And I was like, I guess I'm doing the like green blue thing. I didn't like hard commit to it, but I was like, it's a good start for a green blue deck, I feel like.
Yeah, some pretty big signals that green and blue are probably open.
Yeah. Yeah. And then so I did prioritize Gaia's Might a little bit earlier than like maybe I normally would, but like I'm starting to realize like I think it's like deserving of that early prioritization, like even without Ivy. Because like I only ever used the Ivy's like copy thing once the entire night, but Gaia's Might was still an all-star.
Yeah. That's an important part of this deck.
Yeah, Gaia's Might was huge in this deck. Without Gaia's Might, this deck would have been probably really bad, I think.
Yeah.
Without all 4 of the buffs.
Tatiova is very good. Tatiova is like, this looks like the most Tatiova deck I've seen in a minute.
Denitha's not a slob either.
Yeah. Tatiova I only drew once, but like this is not the deck that like draws enough cards to like
you only have the Codex.
Guarantee Tatiova. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who was more impactful, the Tatiova or the Denitha?
Denitha.
Yeah.
Denitha was
because you're more aggressive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tatiova just shores up like your late game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I drew Denitha more than I drew Tatiova too. So that's
how many root wall activations did you have throughout the night?
4.
That's about all it takes, right? Like how much extra did you get out of them? Like
usually +4.
Yeah, that's stupid.
How many times did that root wall just attack for 2 on the threat of the pump?
Every time. Like, I mean, yeah, he was just getting 2 in literally all night. I had the root balls most games, and people wouldn't want to block them because I had the 4 mana to pump, and if they did, I would just say, sure, I'll lose the turn to kill your guy. You know what I mean? Like,
were you ever scared of getting blown out by that, or was it just worth it?
There were a few situations where I played some people where it's like a little bit of like it was a little bit scary. Like there'd be people that have like a red mana up, and I'd be like somewhat scared of Flowstone Infusion or whatever. And sometimes I would just let it pass the damage and let the root wallet trade, or pass the damage and let the root wall do 2 to face, to kind of play around that. That way, if they do have the card, like at least the root wallet does the work. Majority of the time, if I needed to do it, I was gonna do it, and you kind of have to like make your opponent have it sometimes.
Of course.
Like you need to be like weary of it, right? Like, and you need to be weary of what they're representing. If they have a blue up, they probably have shore up. Make your opponents have it. Like they're like a lot of people that are good at Magic are aware of what they're representing when they leave their mana up like a certain way. And you should strive to do that too. When you tap your mana, you should really look at it and say like, what's the scariest thing I could have right now for my opponent? So which mana should I leave up if I can? Or like one time Andrew got me because I had to take up the shield and Jonas Codex out, and I had 2 mana up, and then at the end of his turn I tapped Jonas Codex to draw a card, and then he killed my guy and I couldn't take up the shield. Like stuff like that, but yeah, the deck was super good. Didn't drop a game. I got to 2 a couple times, but like I was never scared at 2.
On the patented Dragon Ball Z power level, from 0 to 9,000, what would you give this deck?
4,000.
That seems fair. I would even consider like 5,000. I might even be
somewhere between there. Yeah. I don't think this is like I think if you put this up against like every FNM championship deck, I don't think this beats like a lot of them, right?
Yeah, you got a very good rare in Danitha, and Timeless Lettuce is like sus but good, right? Like it's kind of like good. I like it.
It was actually really good.
I think it's good. It's good. Yeah.
I think to keep up all the threats of activation, it seemed really good in the deck.
It looks like you had plenty of ways to spend mana, which is important.
Yeah. The Codex, like every time I drew it, I usually at least had a root wall out where I could just tap the Codex to buff them, which was pretty good. Nice. One time I did play Denitha and I kicked Elvish Hydromancer on the same turn.
That must have been backbreaking for your opponent.
Yeah, my opponent wasn't too happy about it. He thought he was going to win, but
yeah,
he should have known I had those cards because he did pass them to me.
And they did tell you to put the Lotus in your deck too.
Yeah, he did recommend the Lotus. I mean, I was always on the fence about the Lotus.
That isn't a very Ryan card.
No, it's not.
Kind of a sellout.
If it takes a Jonas Codex and a Voda Sea Scavenger and a Tadiova and I got to sell out, and I'll do it. But, if I do it, if I sell out for no reason. Yeah, I mean, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah,
I'm glad,
I'm in the bottom this week.
Yeah, I'm glad. But yeah, got my crown back. Feels good. And played Andrew in the championship, even though I was to his left. He was passing to me 2 out of 3 packs.
I was.
And, he was also in blue, and we just built a better deck. It's that simple. But, you guys can decide for yourself. What do you have going on here, Andrew?
All right. So this week, I started out, my first pick was actually not in my deck at all. My first pick was the Neshoba Brawler, and I had remembered from the last time we had done a draft with a kind of 6-man pod. That's something to kind of note too. We were in 6-man pods this week. We had 2 6-man pods, so there's 12 people there. And so I took the Neshoba Brawler thinking I was going to go domain. And then I remembered it's very hard to get dual land sometimes in lower man pods just because there's less accessibility to them.
For some people.
For some people. We'll get to Roby's FNM recap and see how many lands he got. So I picked that, and then the person passing to me actually passed me an Ether Channeler, which is just a hard signal that they weren't going in blue. Like, it's a very easy splashable card. It's got a reasonably high power level. It's a Swiss Army knife. It does a lot of things. It's the one that can make it's a 2 colorless and a blue for a 2/1 that can make a bird, draw you a card, or bounce a creature. It does one of the 3. And so it's a really good utility creature here. And so I knew that right then and there I needed to be in blue, and blue is going to be one of my colors. So I quickly got out of domain because Channeler really doesn't, it's a good card. It'll fit in there, but I don't feel like it goes with the play style sometimes, but it's just a strong card. So some of the highlights in my deck, I have 2 Gitsu amplifiers. Those are the ones that for a 1 colorless and a red, you can kick them for 3, which is 2 colorless and a blue to bounce a creature, and then they get a +2/+0 for any instants or sorceries you cast. And I had a bevy of things in here, but some of the spicier kind of bits of my deck were actually it was a kind of late game Eureka Declares War. And we were talking about this on our last cast that it had moved up kind of in the power rankings of uncommons, of win rate commons, and I just wanted to try it this week. And so I took an heirloom, Hero's Heirloom.
What does the Declare War do?
Oh, so it's a saga for 1 colorless and 1 red. The first portion of it, you can make an Ornithopter Chapter 1. Ornithopter is a 0/2 flying creature, and so you make a token of that. And then for the second chapter, you can tap any untapped artifacts you control to deal 1 damage to a creature or an opponent, I believe. And then in chapter 3, you can animate one of your artifacts to make it a 4/4 creature until the end of turn. And so it's a pretty decent, it gives you a little board presence, and then it threatens a removal spell, then you can get in for 4. Most of the time with that Ornithopter, you just get in for 4 with that Ornithopter. And it was reasonably pretty good this week with even dealing 1 or 2 damage to take out some things and getting that little incremental advantage there. It was pretty nice. And then what we were talking about last week as well with the Phyrexian Espionage kind of going up, I realized that was something I wanted to do in this deck. And so I picked 3 Phyrexian Espionages this week. And so I had to do a little, in my splashing, I had to actually splash, not because I had a black solid card in my deck. I actually just wanted to splash for the kicker, so I added a Sulphurous Springs and 1 Swamp to my mana base just to make sure I could really go the distance with that Phyrexian Espionage to draw 2 and make them discard a card. And I had a pretty decent run this week. I went 2-0-1, but really I was 2-1. And so I got a nice tie with a friend in the last round. A very gracious tie in the last round. So that was very good. But the deck was it was a solid performer. I knew that blue-red was open and had reasonably put my the person I was passing to in green. I just didn't realize that. I knew they were kind of blue as well, but I don't think we were going to take the same cards. And so there we go. Yeah, it was a pretty solid deck.
What about that meteorite? What about that fucking meteorite just sitting in there? Is that a pretty solid card?
Yeah, it was all right. I thought I was pretty light on removal, honestly. And with just the Flowstone Infusion, a Lightning Strike, which is deal 3 damage or 3 to the face, and then Heirloom's Battle Hymn for the 4 damage. I think I needed a little something else to kind of get over the edge there. And then it also worked well.
Was that card you needed?
Huh?
Stepped up to the plate for you?
Meteorite stepped up to the plate and was like, I got you, buddy. I gotcha. And then it was nice too because I was able to kind of have the possibility to kick the Heirloom. I didn't have a single planes in my deck. And then it also helped me kick the Espionage when I needed it. And this deck is deceivingly mana hungry for how low the curve is.
I feel like this deck is missing Tolarian Geysers.
I think it is too. I didn't see a single one.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
So this deck, I'll tell you what this deck is missing. It's missing more of the spells
payoffs. Yeah, payoffs.
Yeah, it's got a lot of random shit that doesn't really need to be there, I think, and the spell payoffs. Because you probably just didn't see them, right? You needed a Battle Mage Captain.
Yeah, it was pretty light on the spells. It was a weird kind of packs this week on that. No geysers to speak of that I saw, and Ryan just confirmed it too. He was sitting to my left, and we just didn't see him. Sometimes the cards just aren't there for it, but you try to make the best of it. I mean, I'm playing a Yavimaya Still Crusher main board.
Yeah. This is this is not the spells matter deck, right?
No.
This is just mid-range pile.
Tries a little bit to be that, right?
Yeah.
It's not the amplifiers, but I think he's kicking the amplifiers a lot.
He also has the Storm Runner, right?
Mm-hmm. I think this was more of a I'm just gonna bury my opponent in cards. If you look at
sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, go ahead. No, with the 4 Espionages and then the Battlewing Mystic, I was drawing cards like a madman.
Yeah, I think he put the Storm Runner in. I think the Storm Runner in this deck is to really maximize the removal. Yep. Ideally,
absolutely.
And then if you can draw 4 cards off of it with Espionage or whatever, that's cool too. But just the maximization of the removal was felt kind of needed in this deck because none of his creatures are threats, really. I mean, the terror is, the Jin is.
Okay, so I'm gonna fucking segue for that. So I had a buy in round 2, and I had to watch Andrew play, and I know in my heart of hearts that Gen of the Fountain is a bad card. It doesn't line up very well in the format. It's the 6 mana 4/4 flyer that whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it exiles itself. It has another ability. I don't know its other ability.
So for the Djinn of Fountains, it can exile itself until the end of turn. It can scry 1, or it can get a +1/+1 until the end of turn.
Yeah, but when I saw it played, I know that it's so bad. But whenever Andrew played it, it looked really good. He faded 2 removal spells just by playing a Thrill of Possibility and a random Lightning Strike to the dome on his opponent, and it felt kind of good. But I still know that it's bad. I will never play it. But it looked good in the context of when I saw it played.
The reason it's bad is because it's basically an 8-drop, right?
Yeah.
If you play it for 6, you're really just... I mean, you could play it for 6 if your opponent's top decking, right?
Make them
hope
they
don't.
Make
them top deck it.
Yeah, you land it and just say, okay, do you got a removal for it? Yes, no.
Yeah.
Proceed.
But if your opponent's got 2 to 3 cards, you can't play it until you have at least 1 instant or sorcery that can protect it.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's an 8-drop, it's bad.
Yeah.
Because, wouldn't you rather play a Mossbeard Ancient? Wouldn't you rather play, I don't know, so much other good stuff?
I will say it was pretty nice to scry 1 with my Phyrexian Espionage just before I drew. It felt pretty good.
That just feels like a win more, though.
I
maybe
really
not. I mean, I guess you didn't really have the threats. You needed a threat.
I needed something to end the game, and that's a 4/4 flyer or a 5/5 flyer. that has some evasion to it. And even to protect itself is pretty decent. It's not my favorite of win conditions. Honestly, if I could have had 3 terrors, this deck would have been really good.
Yeah, the terror is probably like one of the best cards in this. So.
Yeah, there's definitely, every week I feel like you come with some sussy cards in your deck. And Jin is one. We've all had to put meteorites in our deck. Like, we don't want to do it.
I've never, ever put a meteorite in my deck.
But, sometimes you have to put the meteorite in your deck.
No.
Sometimes you just got to eat the dog shit.
Every time I played it, it really just it killed the creature every time and just got me further into the game. It was pretty nuts.
This is the Battlefly Swarm of this week.
Yeah, meteorite. I feel like you have these decks and you have these you guys always tell me I live in magical Christmas land, but you have these magical Christmas land scenarios that makes a card shine one time and then burns that image into your brain and you just chase that dragon.
I was just the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I was just so happy that Roby could witness how good the Jin of Fountains was that week.
It did look really good in that circumstance, for sure.
You're going to have to break my arm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do like to see that you did go out of your shell a little bit and fitted some swamps in there for that Phyrexian espionage.
Yeah, I really thought about it. Normally it's not something I normally do, but you guys have kind of wear it on me, and I did kick that thing quite a bit, and it did feel real good when I was kicking it.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're in the hard 2-color deck, it's really not punishing to put a colorless land in your deck.
Yeah.
You
had to duel.
My double pip cards were pretty high this week, so we're in the higher in the curve, and they were kind of few and far between, so it didn't punish too much.
Well, I mean, you had 9 of each source. You had 9 red sources and 9 blue sources, which is a lot.
Yeah.
For people at home, that's a lot. That's overkill. That's 2 of everything, every game. Basically 9.
Yeah.
You should feel comfortable with 6 to 7. I think in most deck sources, don't you think, Roby?
Yeah.
A main color.
I don't count, but if I did, I would probably say that.
7 is comfortable, 6 is a little bit iffy, 8's kind of the target if it's a big color, and anything above 8 is just super gravy, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this deck looks
it was good.
It would kind of take a miracle to 201.
That just didn't feel it. It was a real just a series of just cogs in the wheel, and eventually it would just grind you out, just getting more cards than your opponents. Really, that's how I won most of my matches, was just burying my opponent in cards.
Yeah,
I would get a 3-for-1 or get a 3-card advantage on the espionages, and then I'd do a battle wing to refuel my hand when I just drew all the lands from the espionage.
Dragon Ball Z power level.
I'd say this is like a 3,000. It's not too high, but it has potential.
I think that's a low generous, just a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit. I think it's a 2,700.
This is a day 1 Krillin.
I just think that it needs to unlock its potential. I thought it was kind of fun to play with some weird cards that I never, the Yorita Declares War.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of fun to try it this week. We talked about it last week, so.
The Dragon Whelp was getting in, I'm sure. The Jin would get in. The Terror was always good.
Yeah.
You had some removal. The Kavu seems kind of like an all-star in your deck, honestly.
Yeah, there were some games where I curved out, and it was just a brutal curve.
Yeah,
and so that was kind of fun with the whelp going at the top. But
did you Mystic on 2 ever, or did you always save it for the card draw?
No, I Mysticked on 2 quite a bit.
Yeah, isn't it so good?
It was pretty strong. Flyers are still Flyers are still underrated in this set, surprisingly.
There's not going to be a ton of people that it beats, but there's going to be some percent of people that a battling Mystic on 2 will just beat.
Yeah. Something I saw in this deck that was kind of fun. I'll throw it to Roby after this, but I actually was beating down a lot in the early game, and then I'd lose in the mid game, but then I'd come back in the late game with all the card draw and just get that last couple points of damage to win out the game. And that's quite a bit how my games kind of won and how the game flow went, where I'd just get a very early aggression, stall out, and then finally it would all snowball back, and I'd get them for that last couple points of damage.
Yeah, I saw you get to amplify someone for 7. On turn 4.
This is honestly just sacrilegious to blue red decks.
It really is.
Like,
it really is. I don't think this is like the blue red deck.
Like, it makes me mad.
This isn't really like a blue red deck. Like, this isn't like
it's not.
Yeah.
It's a blue red control deck, really, right? Like
with 3 removal spells.
Yeah.
With my Steel Crusher in there.
And one of those removal spells is Flowstone Infusion.
No, that's good. That's
yeah,
good.
but like you're calling it, you can't really call it a control deck, right? I don't. It's like
he's good. He's evasive. You want some evasive kind of threats there, just to kind of.
Just,
you got to win the game somehow.
This just proves you really can just do whatever you want.
Yeah, good piloting. Good piloting.
It's making me more mad the more I look at it. Oh my god.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Ruby,
good piloting for sure. Good piloting. I won't argue with that.
There you go. Ruby, tell me about your deck.
Yeah, I went 1-2 this week. I had to buy. I had tough matchups. So I had the 5-color deck. And not only did I have the 5-color deck, I had the 5-color deck that jams everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like in pack 1, I first picked a Territorial Morrow, the 5-mana XX, where X is the number of basic land types you control. And then I got past the Cruelty of Gix, and I was like, okay, my deck is just going to be random good cards. So then I just proceeded to take all the lands. And in pack 1, I think I ended up with 8 dual lands. And then in pack 2 and pack 3, I just took every good card I saw. And I was the jam everything 5-color deck, which is not ideal. I was base green, kind of. Like I had the most green sources, but yeah, I just didn't get there.
What's it going to take to get you off this Jam and Mesa Cavaliers train?
Yeah,
I would have traded every Soaring Drake in this deck for a Mesa Cavalier. I needed the life. If I would have won games if all my Soaring Drakes were Mesa Cavaliers. I genuinely needed the life.
Seems better.
The extra 2 points of toughness isn't better than the 2 points of life I gained off Mesa Cavalier.
I disagree.
Especially in this, where I just needed to live long enough to drop bombs on people.
I mean, by that logic, why do we have Shadow Prophecy then?
I know. It was bad. It felt kind of bad. I really needed the life, but I needed a card draw too, you know.
If we paint a picture of this, Roby's curve is like, it's got a nice bell curve from 1 to 3, and then it's got the same bell curve from 4 to 7.
From 5 to 7. Yeah,
it's like some rolling hills. Bell curve here, bell curve there.
I was looking at this. I think I could have caught all my 3-drop creatures just for like ramp, and I think my deck would have been good.
I think this deck needs some ramp for sure. You needed like that joint expiration.
Yeah, I needed ramp.
Yeah, you definitely needed ramp to find any way.
I didn't see any of it, but yeah.
Did you kind of miss not having any root wallers or anything like other kind of domainy type payoffs?
I thought the Morrow was probably going to be enough, but it turned out not to be, just off the fact of like destroy evil.
It seemed like your deck could have benefited honestly from like Coral Colonies or Blight Piles or just like 2-drops that can like block stuff.
I don't know. I think I just needed to be able to get to my 5s better. Like if I was able to get to my 5s, I would have played like what's the random 3-drop go find a land card? It was in your deck, Ryan.
Oh yeah.
I would have played that.
Scout the Wilderness.
I would have played like 3 of those.
This looks like a good Scout the Wilderness deck too, by the way. Like if it had a couple of those, or even the one that searches for 2 lands and scries you 5.
I feel like Deathbloom Gardener would have slotted really good in here.
Yeah.
I probably even would have played that, honestly. Because I just kind of ended up having to play like these random creatures that kind of don't do anything for me.
I mean,
like the Soaring Drakes and the Mesa Cavaliers.
You needed things that could block there, because like none of these are win cons, but like they're flyers and stuff, and you don't really need that. Like you just need things that can get you to the late game.
The Iconoclast seems a little sus.
Yeah, it was kind of fine, right? Like a trade with a 3/3.
Like the lack of bodies early game seems like the most glaring issue to me.
Yeah. My problem, how the games played out, were I just needed my threats to stick, and like when it was important for my threats to stick, they just got blown out.
Yeah.
Like I got blown out by Destroy Evil. This is like the deck that gets bodied hard by Destroy Evil. Even
Yeah.
Citizen's Arrest. Like I don't really have a way to deal with a Citizen's Arrest.
Yeah, you do have two premier sagas also for Destroy Evil to hit.
Yeah, two of the very good sagas. I had the Elder Dragon War, which is good, but sometimes it just wasn't enough, you know.
Yeah, and that can deal 2 damage to each creature and make
creature
a 4/4 dragon.
And discard cards and draw them.
Yeah. And you have Cruelty of Gix that like does everything.
Yeah, it like discards a card from your opponent's hand. It
lets you search your library.
Search your library for a card, and then it
puts a card from any graveyard into the battlefield under your control.
Oh yeah, under my control, yeah.
But yeah, it seems like if your life total was better when you got to your threats, like you would have won more games. Like it feels like your lower half of your curve is just like a little bit greedy with like Flyer, Shadow Prophecy, Impulse, and Joint Exploration. Like just like cards that really need to support your late game, but are really just kind of not, I guess.
I did have like one of the things I was running up against too is like my deck was just kind of not positioned very well either. Like my Artillery Blasts, which are okay in this deck where I'm like pretty reliably 5 color, like have 5 different basic land types. Like they kind of did nothing against vigilance creatures, and I played against quite a few of those, which were hard to deal with.
Yeah, but you played against like 5-drop vigilance creatures, right? I guess you played against like a 3-drop one too, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had like no way to kill
specifically talking about the cleric guy, the one that
Anointed Peacekeeper.
Yeah, Anointed Peacekeeper bodied me in game 1.
Which is the 3/3 vigilance that like looks at your hand and makes something cost 2 more.
Yep.
So yeah, you had like one way to deal with that, which was
it just wasn't. I wasn't positioned well in my games either.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that my deck was slower, right? Like I
feel like you're just
better.
Yeah, your early curve supports the late game more, and your deck I think has easy 3 wins.
Yeah.
I just don't think it supports it quite as good as it should.
Yeah. And
did you ever have like too much big threats in your hand, and like while you're just getting bodied?
Yeah, I felt like I needed more mana always. Like at every point, like I could have always used more mana. I don't know, like enough to justify a fucking meteorite, but
well, like this deck doesn't use meteorites, right? Like this deck, because by the time you get to 5, you have to start playing. Yeah,
this is the sick Timeless Lotus deck.
This would have been a great Timeless Lotus deck.
This is definitely the Deathbloom guy deck too, like the
I could have used them. I never saw one.
Yeah,
just anything that rams. I mean, even those Seek the Wilderness would have been good. I like Seek the Wilderness in these kind of decks too, because those 2 1/1s really.
Weather Seed Treaty is fucking nuts. Like that would have been like ideal, right?
Yeah, that would have been nuts.
I also had the Green Widow, which was amazing, but I didn't see it in a lot. I only saw it once all night.
I actually think what do you think about the O2 Floriferous Vine Walls? I think they would have helped some, not a ton.
A little bit,
like I think they could have like replaced Impulse and Joint Exploration, honestly.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
Not Joint Exploration. Maybe
Impulse. That's ramp.
I mean, Joint Exploration can be ramp, but it's like really
Joint Exploration is better with Floriferous Vine Wall.
Yeah,
because you get that extra land.
I'd replace the Iconocast.
Yeah, that wasn't ideal for sure. Like
I don't think he could replace a body, honestly.
Well, if you got with the Floriferous Vine Wall, you're fine because it's just
I would trade a Iconoclast for a Vine Wall.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Iconoclast
is like you're just like trading into anything, right? Like you're just super willing to trade it.
But it doesn't get you further in your plan to get to the to get to the higher end stuff that you really.
I mean, it does by keeping you alive, right?
Yeah. Well, so does the other one, right? Like you just
because it's O2. It doesn't really like.
It saves you like 3 life, though, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. No.
Or more. I don't know.
Saves you like 2 life, maybe 3 life. Yeah, maybe more like late game, but like you're just staring down the barrel. Like I feel like this deck, you're just always behind and scrambling to get bored, and you need ways to like control the board early. Raph can't do that because he can't. Like he can block, but he can't kill stuff. Salvage Mana Worker can't kill stuff.
Well, he has a flow
I
stone.
have
The
a
cut
pretty
down.
decent removal suite.
Yeah, you do
Like,
have a decent
okay,
removal
yeah.
suite, but like
It's
that
not
removal.
ideal, right? But
Yeah,
the artillery blast, I got them for free, right? But
yeah.
I could have probably used like even tribute might have been good, or extinguish the light. Extinguish the
Yeah.
light might have been good just to get the 3 life.
Yeah, that probably would have been
Even
good.
the way the deck was built too, like it was just begging for some sort of ramp in the 3 slot.
Yeah,
Like look at that 4 drop. You just wanted to bypass 4 completely to get to your 5s.
yeah. I wasn't positioned super ideally, but I needed ramp for sure.
And I will say, like 6-man pods do go a long way. Like your 6-man pod decks are never going to be as good as your 8-man pod decks.
Oh
Just
Yeah.
blanket statement. Like 6-man pod decks are just significantly lower on the power level.
My mana
scale.
was good.
Your mana was like amazing for a 6-man
Yeah,
I
pod.
did have fucking amazing mana. Like it really was like the gem everything deck.
For a
For
6-man
sure.
pod, that's a really strong mana base.
I was aggressively taking lands.
I mean, that's like a superb mana base for an 8-man pod.
Oh,
Honestly,
Yeah, 11. Yeah, like most of my like duels, like I didn't have to take a bunch of bad duels, right? Like all my duels were just like on color and good.
Well, I mean, like
Well, like as
everything's
much
on
as you can
color,
be
right? Like
on color and good, right?
they all had green in them. A lot of them had green in them, which was good.
Yep. Definitely not my best work, but
Yeah, you've been preaching that destroy evil, and then you just get bodied
and
by it.
then, yep, people
That's
be
what
listening.
happens.
People be listening. Getting them destroy evils. Keep doing it. Keep doing
Keep
it.
doing it. Keep listening.
I had a buy in round 2, which is
the one win.
It seemed like it was a close game too, right?
It's really close. I fucking bodied them. My game 1 was actually really close. So we went to game 3 against the first place guy. And yeah, we went to game 3. Game 1 was like my deck was working. It was putting in the work real good in game 1, and then game 2 and 3 I just got Boros. Yeah.
You just got Boros.
Yeah.
So power level scale, what do we got here? What's my scouter reading?
I say 3,000.
I say a little bit lower because it's
I
missing.
know
some
you do.
things.
Science time. You guys are building these in arena and playing each other later.
Okay.
What deck is
I
the
already got
true?
mine built.
I think I am not afraid of fucking.
You should be. All right, I'll jam one game with you afterwards.
The true 3,000 power level deck.
Yeah.
The true 3,000. Yeah, dude, it'll take a 2,700 all day.
Yeah, because one of you is delirious, right? Like one of you, they can't both be 3,000.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
One of you did go 1 and 2, went on the bye. One of you went 201. You're both saying your decks are the same power level. Let's see it. You know?
No, we'll see. We'll see for sure.
We'll see.
So we had a question from a viewer, and I figured we'd do like a whole segment because it's such a good, well thought out question. That's like we could talk about for literally fucking 10 hours. So our question from our viewer was, I hear a lot about sending and receiving signals during the draft, but don't fully understand what they might look like practically. Do y'all have any examples on sending or receiving a signal during draft, especially as it pertains to Dominaria United? And this is like one of those deep philosophical questions to me. Anyway, it's like when I hear this, like I feel like we have to like break down from the beginning. Like, what even is a signal? What do you guys think about that? What is a signal? Like, how would you define a signal?
I think a signal is a card that you feel is passed to you that is like guiding you on a certain path. It's like a sign that your opponent's not doing this, or the person to your right is not is not playing this deck or this archetype or whatever, and they're not interested in the card they just passed to you, so therefore it's free for you to move into that.
It's something where you get an indication that something is open in the draft, whether it's a rare being passed to you that is a certain, sending something or seeing something that is a certain power level that you feel is kind of ranked high. And if somebody's passing you that, or you're passing that, then you're sending them a signal that that is open and that it is probably something you should be drafting. And if you get enough of them together, it says, wow, that is very open. I should be drafting that archetype.
For me, like a signal is an irreplaceable card in a deck, in an archetype or a deck, that like a predetermined deck. But go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, so I think, like, if I had to have a concise definition of signal, I was going to use something Andrew said. I think it's getting past a stronger card than the current pick. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But to build that onto Roby's, like a crucial card for a certain deck in a pick place that it shouldn't be in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For my concise definition.
Yeah, that's like the more, yep. And I think we could all approach this super differently. So the first part of this, though, like one of the biggest level ups I ever had in draft actually had like nothing to do with Magic the Gathering. So, which is weird. This is weird to explain. But like at one point in my life, I got really, really, really into auto chess, or like it was a game like Teamfight Tactics, where like it's a lot like draft, but you're basically drafting all the way to the end, rather than in Magic the Gathering where you have like one draft and then you play all your games, right? Like you're drafting throughout the entire thing. And in those type of games, there's like late game compositions. So you're basically building towards a certain thing. And I noticed whenever I was playing a lot of that, I got way better at draft. And I think the reason for that is like it changed the way that I think about drafting. I think about drafting as like a certain amount of decks basically shuffled up, put into packs. And the goal of the draft is to find a deck that you have access to the most amount of cards in. And that completely changed the way that I draft. And obviously, like you can play with that a little bit, but like signals to me are basically just like whether or not one of those decks is open, but like one of those pieces of that deck, like the irreplaceable piece of that deck that you need for that deck. Because a lot of the pieces in each deck can be like replaceable, but signals are like signs that you will be getting more of those irreplaceable pieces, or the irreplaceable pieces themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think like signals are also signs that you'll be getting more of those supporting cards, those kind of cogs in the wheel later than you would normally if you just force something. So there's like kind of two ways to like approach a draft. And one is basically to care about signals and find your lane. And then another way is to say like, oh, I got like two good picks. I'm just going to play this, right? Mm-hmm. And it's often incorrect to just force your way down a draft. Like, I got these two cards. I want to play them. That's what I'm going to do. That's often going to make your deck just weaker in general. Like, the power level of those two cards might be high, but oftentimes it's not worth it because you're not ever guaranteed to draw those cards, even ever in a draft.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So if the general power level of all of your cards is higher, your deck's going to be better for what you're trying to do. And so to me, the signals are really signs that, like, yeah, you're getting these good cards early, but you're still going to be getting like above average cards late in that deck that are maybe not like crucial pieces, but that are just like very good cogs in the wheel of the deck that kind of make the deck go.
Do you think there's like a predetermined amount of decks in each format?
I mean, yeah, they put decks on rails. Like every once in a while, you can like kind of rogue. There's some rogue decks that kind of pop up in formats that I'm not sure were like intended. They probably were. I mean, they know
this is one of the hardest formats, I think, in terms of like the amount of decks, because the splashing is so good that like there's so many random offshoots of every deck, right?
I
like
think,
there's
significantly more decks in this format than there is in other, like if the way you phrase it, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Which makes it kind of hard.
Yeah, but a lot of those decks are like similar in this format.
Which kind of gets me to my next point of like knowing the decks, and like to like be able to draft like this, I think you need to like know what the decks are, what cards are replaceable and like know the core of each deck. And then you can kind of like work with what you get in a way, you know, like having a strong core, like the irreplaceable cards in each archetype.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think what is really to be learned from this set, like if this set were to give me a lesson, right? It's there's tons of good cards, but if you just jam them together, it doesn't make a good deck.
For
Mhm.
sure. I've learned this a million times, right?
Right.
like
Some
this week,
sets that's
right?
okay to do, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But this set is not. Like this set you have to have a deck that really is tuned if you're gonna get the wins.
You have to have the core. You have to have the irreplaceable cards that make the archetype, and then you can kind of like fill that with other good cards. But like just having the good cards isn't enough.
Yeah.
You need to have like the core of that archetype or whatever you're
I
doing,
think
right?
something in this set that's been different in a lot of sets too is in like something like a Crimson Vow, for an example. That was a really bomb heavy set. And we mean like just cards that are just almost unbeatable once you play them. And in this set, I felt like there wasn't really anything here where I said, ooh, that's it. Like I'm just going to lose the game on the spot. I think there's enough tricks and enough removal and enough maneuverability in your deck to really, it comes down to the deck construction and how well the cogs are working in your machine. And you can get past these cards pretty good. You know, you've seen like bomb cards just getting defeated by a destroy evil or some random pump spell.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've had a format like that in a while where it's just like, no, this one common could just take care of that. And
Yeah,
it's
like
instantly in the game for you.
yeah,
And so
like
it's made it a
my
little bit
top
harder.
8 cards in my deck all got destroyed by destroy evil, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah, I think this is truly a format that requires a sequence of cards to win.
Absolutely.
I think it's less like actual deck construction, but
Yeah, sequencing
in
is
this
super
one,
important. Like deck,
sequencing
but
is very important. But
with that being said, like the more consistent your deck is, the better your
the
sequencing
better,
is
yeah.
gonna be, right? So
Like the more access to card draw, like the more you can get your sequencing better for sure. And this is also like a set where I think like one of the biggest traps I think is like if you have bad card evaluation, like this just screws you. Like you will never know what is a signal
Yeah.
and what's not a signal, or like there's a lot of traps I think in this format
Mhm.
for sure.
yeah, I feel like the most important thing you can do is evaluate, like at the end of pack one, evaluate what you have, and you really need to ask yourself, like, what am I trying to do? Because there's going to be cards that are going to be past you that are going to be very good cards. Like you're going to get past Phyrexian Espionages and Talarian Geysers and Arbog's Repossession, but those don't go in every blue and black deck. You know what I mean?
For sure, yeah. That's
So,
a very good point.
yeah, you really need to look at your cards and say, how am I going to win games? And then you really have to draft cards that support that strategy. Like there'll be some number of people and there'll be some number of games where you're just going to win a tournament because you have very strong cards. But in this set, more often than not, that's not the case. Like one or two strong cards is not enough. Like you can't just draft cards in a vacuum because they're the best.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to at the point of like I think it's really important to build towards a deck. Like not just like the archetype, even like the specific deck. Like I think this format you can get really lost in the weeds if you try to like just follow one color. I think like because the colors do so much stuff. Like you could have like a red green aggressive deck or like a red green 5-color deck basically. Like and certain cards are going to be better in the red green aggressive deck that would be terrible in the 5-color deck, right? Like there's a lot of traps.
But like even deeper than that, like there's some generically just good cards that sometimes you have to pass for like a quote unquote worse card.
That is the core of your deck, right?
Yeah,
like,
that you need.
Perfect example is Talarian Terror. Like there are decks that need Talarian Terrors to win. But like they're generically worse than this removal spell you might see, right?
Right.
But like knowing when you need the signal, you need the core piece of your deck, and like when you're you could just like get another removal spell, right?
Right. Yeah,
That's
and
like
there's
that's what makes drafters good, right?
like another one is like Gaia's Might, I think. Like there are some
Gaia's
decks
Might
that
is-
can really abuse Gaia's Might, and then there's some decks that Gaia's Might's just mediocre in.
Yeah, it's a core piece of some decks. But
Right.
like some decks it's like not actually good, right? Like but it can be like playable. It could even be playable, right?
Yeah.
But like isn't necessarily part of the deck. It could be a replaceable piece of some other decks. But like seeing a Gaia's Might could be like a good that like I see Gaia's Might as a signal.
Yeah,
Even.
for sure.
Yeah, like that you can do that thing. And that's
Yeah.
like a core piece of a deck that you could build, right?
Yep. Yeah. I think when you like set out your deck and you like look at it and think like at least my stuff goes together, you're gonna generally be happy with your results.
Yeah.
Like even if the power levels, like you don't need rares, you don't need that stuff. Like you don't have to have it. Obviously they're good. That's good to have. But if you just like lay your deck out and say like, yeah, this is cohesive. This kind of goes together. They're all have like a common theme or goal. It just makes your deck way better. Like that's what we were talking about in Roby's FNM, where if he had the ramp in the early slots, then his deck would have been significantly better because those early slots would have built into what he was trying to do. Because like ultimately he's trying to win with 7/7 tramplers and 4/5 line breaker. You know,
Like I could have had the ramp deck, right?
right?
That's what I was building towards, but like I was missing a key piece, right? Which was the ramp.
Yeah. And you're not always going to get there, but if you really approach signals and are willing to throw away early picks, you'll get there more often than not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had a couple of examples of what I would call like a practical example of like a signal. And some of my signals that like the cards I would usually consider a signal to a certain deck is like obviously if you're ever getting past the Wingmantle Chaplain, you should just try to do the thing. And that's like the most obvious one. We all see that as a signal, right? Mental Chaplain. Yeah, that's like a signal into a deck, right? Like you should do everything in your power to be that deck at that point.
Yeah, if you ever get past the Wingmantle Chaplain, yeah.
I feel like it's a signal into a color at that point because as they're passing Wingmantle Chaplain, your person who's passing to you is definitely not in white. Like
there's like I wouldn't play Wingmantle and Boros aggro.
Yeah. Like I see it more into the deck rather than the colors. Specifically in this format. In a lot of formats, like you could just do that, right? But like I feel like you just get so much more rewarded for like doing the thing rather than just jamming it going into a color, whether or not that's good for the thing.
Because there's only two reasons you'd ever pass a Wingmantle Chaplain. One, there's a Shouldred.
It's pack 3. There's a lot of reasons.
2, I'm talking about pack 1. I should clarify I'm talking about pack 1. 1, there's a Shouldred. 2, there's a foil Wingmantle Chaplain.
Yeah.
Right?
So another one of my like I just picked like 4 generic things that I consider signals. If you're getting like a late like pick 8, protect the negotiators. I think that's a really good signal too that like there's an opening in like a blue white deck and that's a card that really shines in those decks. And so like I usually like to take those if I see them late and move into the thing. Gaia's Might's obviously a signal. I think like protect the negotiators is kind of like a key piece of that deck. The blue white go wide deck.
Can I ask you a question on that one?
Yep.
So the 3/3 bird that makes 1/1s, would you consider that a signal for the deck that late?
Like a pack 7, pick 7?
Yeah, like pick 6, pick 7 range.
Yeah, I probably would too. It's not irreplaceable though.
Yeah, I feel like it's not good enough.
It's
Like, I feel like
it's
someone could
not.
be in that deck and not draft
That's
that
like one of
card.
the traps, right? Like
Yeah,
it's not like, and that's where like you really have to know the decks, right?
yeah. But then if you see a Wrath, you would definitely. That's a huge signal, right?
Wrath's kind of a weird one, right? Because it's good in like multiple different
It's
scenarios, right?
splashable. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's splashable.
yeah. But yeah, I would consider that. But Wrath isn't irreplaceable. Like I think he could be replaceable in some contexts. Like I see a blue white. Yeah, you're right. It's a signal for sure. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
It's more of a cog in the wheel, you think, than a key
Then
piece.
like the like real hard like this is what makes the deck kind of things. But it is a very yeah, it's good. It's good. It's a like very important part. Miag's the like one of the irreplaceable parts of like the more aggressive 5-color decks. I think that's usually a pretty strong signal. And
How late of us, like how late when you're seeing guys match, are you like, okay, this is a signal? Because like pick
probably
3,
like pick
it's
pick
not a signal.
7, pick 6, 7.
Pick 6, 7.
Yep. I think here it's pretty safe for you to go pick 6, pick 7, because that means like 6 people. Because like people do be taking all the payoffs, but that is one of the payoffs, right?
It's a huge payoff, yeah.
I think
It's a
that's one
huge
of the cards that you hope to wheel sometimes, even though it doesn't really wheel
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
And I feel like you're right. People take the payoffs for people take the big splash and just are the big like hitters first, and then they
But
think that
like
that's
it
gonna come
is
back
a
around.
payoff. It is a payoff,
Yeah,
right?
Gaia's
It is a
Might is
payoff.
is a huge piece. Like it's like a certain type of domain deck, though. It's
Yeah.
not.
It's not everyone, right?
It's
Like
not
that's
everyone's domain
and
deck.
that's where it's super important to know the decks. Like know which deck wants the Gaia's Might and like which deck doesn't really need it. Like my deck didn't need Gaia's Mights that bad.
Yeah, and my
Like
deck
it could have
did,
used
right? Like
them.
if
Yeah.
you look at mine and Roby's decks, like Gaia's Might was like a key piece in my deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like Gaia's Might would have been I probably would have played one maybe, but I didn't need it. It wasn't a
I don't
key
think you
piece.
need it in your deck.
Yeah.
I
I
think
would
you
have
would have
played
played
it
one
though. I
to
would have
like
played
block
one for
defensively.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, but like it's a replaceable piece in my deck, but it's a super key piece in Ryan's deck.
Right.
Yep.
So like you
And
might hear us talk about like how Gaia's Might's good, but in given context, it's not always the best.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's a key thing.
And
Go ahead.
my final signal, like there's a million signals in there, but like this is one of the most obvious ones, the Battle Mage Captain. Like there is a deck that needs Battle Mage Captain. For sure. Like that's a very good signal if you're seeing those later. Even like
That's like a
pick
pick
4.
4 signal.
Yeah, pick
Yeah.
4.
Are you willing to throw away what you've done for the past 4 picks to go into that once you see that?
I am.
Yes, I think so. I
Because
think
I mean, that's
pretty
probably the
good.
most important part of reading the signals is saying,
Yep.
yes, I see the signal. I'm going to go that direction.
Yep. Like, because it's a
And
very strong card.
sometimes like early in packs there's like false signals too. Like there can be like there could have been a better blue red card in this deck. Like it could have been a rare or just like a mythic, or you know what I mean? Like there could have been a better card in this deck and someone beside you is still in blue red, but they pass you a
Yep.
battle more. But it's okay to take it and speculate and say like, if this is there, I have a key piece for it, as opposed to taking like a mediocre card that's going to fit into what you have.
Yep. And
Like
then
it's okay to waste a pick or two trying to find a lane.
Yep. I agree with that wholeheartedly, genuinely. Yep. And then I had a couple examples of cards that like are generically insanely good cards, but like also are replaceable. Like are super like not signals. Like there are good cards that you'll take all the time that aren't necessarily a signal that like an actual archetype is open, and more just like a signal that a certain color could be open, which doesn't necessarily even mean that the archetype that you're trying to go into is open. And like one of those, which is like a never pass card ever, is like just because you like get past a Liliana doesn't mean like any single archetype is actually open. Right? Would you guys agree with that? Like that
Like
just
there's
means like,
times where you just need Extinguish the Light or Herb
oh,
Repossession more than you need a Liliana.
for sure,
Mm.
right? Like which is weird. And we're all gonna take it just because it's like a $40 card. But
Yeah.
like in a vacuum, like in the context, like if you're actually trying to win, like it's not an important piece to any deck.
Oof. I think it just
I
slots
think
into
there's an
any deck.
aggressive sabotage
It's
deck.
Yeah,
that
this is like
yeah, but like I'm talking
it's
like
still a removal spell at its heart. Like it's still -2 destroy a creature or sacrifice a creature.
yeah, but like what archetype is the Liliana deck?
I think it just slots into wherever you want
It
to play
slots
removal.
into it as a good card, right? Yeah, is that like a real deck? Not like
I mean, there's
it's
like
not a
Raven Man
signal.
and like
It's not a
it's not a signal.
signal.
It's a
not a
signal that
signal.
your opponent wants to give you $50, but
Yeah, but like
I think the signal that I'm getting is my opponent is definitely not in black when they're passing me
Yeah.
something like that.
but
And
that
that's
doesn't
something,
necessarily
well,
mean
are you
that
saying
like
there's no black card you'd take over Liliana no matter what deck you have? Like
it'd have to be
value out of the
really,
equation. Like you're on Arena,
it'd
you're
have to
in
be
black.
like, I know. I mean, Liliana is very strong. It's a planeswalker. Like, I think the power level on Liliana, like, besides Sheldred being in the pack, like, what else is on the power level of that?
It's not about
the power
just
level.
the raw power level though. Like
It's about the
first off,
context of the
Liliana's
deck.
raw power level is not even that good. Either we both discard or use sack. Like an edict on a stick is not even super high. Like
I feel like it's got to
if
be
you
answered, though. Like, do you just sit there and let it tick up to 6?
I've like just attacked through it quite a bit.
I
if
think
you're
it
in an
just
Esper deck, if you're in an Esper deck, do you take Chaplain or Lily?
In an Esper deck?
Chaplain.
Yeah, Chaplain easy.
Like
I
the
feel
power
like
level.
Liliana is a little bit easier. Chaplain, you have to build around it. Liliana just slots the deck. Chaplain needs, how many cards does Chaplain need to be good? How many cards does
Okay.
Liliana need to be good?
We're getting derailed. Do you think it's a signal?
Yeah, it's a signal that black is open.
I disagree. I think if
I
you get past
disagree
the
too.
Liliana, it's like pick 2 or 3, and nothing in pick 2 or
Wow.
3 is like a super signal. And Liliana's definitely not a signal. There's black cards I would take over Liliana. There's cards in the deck that Liliana would fit in that I would take over it if I was
It
like.
is a replaceable piece of a deck. Like there
it's
isn't
a
a
good
deck
card.
that it is a very, very good card. It is a strong card. But it is a replaceable piece of a deck.
Now, pick
Right.
6, obviously, it's a signal. Like, pick 6, it's a signal, right? That black's open.
Yeah, which is never, ever.
But that's
ever,
never
ever
going to
happening.
happen. Yeah. Yeah. But pick 2, pick 3, it's not a signal.
And I think, okay, so I got another
Wow.
one for you guys. Lightning Strike. I do not think Lightning Strike is a irreplaceable part of any deck. I think, like, it could be a sign that, like, red's open, but I don't think that. And you play them, it's very good, but I also think it could pretty easily be replaced.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like Keldon's strike team is a way bigger signal than
Lightning Strike, yeah.
Or a Maria's Outrider is a way bigger signal than a Lightning Strike. I think people are passing you a Lightning Strike, and like a Lightning Strike's a good card. I think if you get past a Lightning Strike, past a Lightning Strike, like pick 6, 7, 8, I think it's fair to say like the person to your right is probably not in red, but I don't think it's fair to speculate beyond that.
Yep. I don't think it's a signal.
Yeah. It doesn't really give you any information except for the person next to you is not drafting red.
Yeah, I think that's all the information you really need, though. I mean, you can't really. How far can you read beyond for signals besides your left and your right? Like, can you read
This
three
is where we
people
get
beyond?
into like the different philosophies.
Yeah,
Right?
like you
It is a philosophy.
because
We're
basically like you're right now you're thinking of old school color signals, and this is more like a archetype signal. Like lightning strike doesn't give you rails. It
I
doesn't
think
tell you
there
to
are
build a deck.
I
yeah.
think there are two signals. There's a macro and there's a micro. The macro is the color, micro is the archetype, right?
Sure.
Okay, good. So I think we're just hung up on we're hung up on the archetypes here. Like the first thing you need to do is just know the archetypes of the format, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then just the basic
yeah,
colors.
yeah.
But really, like, how far are you getting into like the person 3 seats away from me is this and that? You know, when I'm passing something, I'm trying to put my opponent or I say opponent because they're all opponents really, but I'm trying to put the person next to me in something that I'm not in. You know, I'm not going to put you in green and I'm going to be in green. It's cutting me off by signaling to you that I'm in green or signaling, you know, by passing you no black cards. I'm signaling to you that there's no black coming by. I'm probably in black. You probably know that, right? Or by me passing you an extinguish a light, you're like, Andrew's not in black.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think that there's like there's like so many other like archetype cards that you should probably be taking over a lightning strike, right?
Yeah, I think
Mm.
over the entire time I've drafted this set, I've maybe drafted 2 lightning strikes, which is like
And
absurd to say.
like it's a good card. I'm never saying that it's like a bad card. I'm just saying like it's more important to have the core of your deck than a piece of your deck that has replacements for it. Like you're
Lightning,
always taking
yeah,
the captain over a lightning strike, right?
right. Lightning strike is not a key piece in like any deck.
Yep. That's what I'm saying. It's like it fills a role in a lot of decks for sure. But
you're
just
never drafting
seeing
a
it,
deck where you're just like, man, if I had one more lightning strike, like this deck would have been legit.
I don't
You know
know.
what
I
I
feel
mean?
like my deck, if I had another lightning strike, my deck would have been legit.
Really?
yeah, but it also would have
Yeah.
been good with like another flowstone infusion, right?
I don't think so. I think lightning strike is a little different. It's a little unique. Like the way my like I said, how the games were playing out, I dealt a lot of damage early, and I needed some way to get over the top for that last.
Would you have rather had a lightning strike or a Balmor captain?
Which a Battlemore captain?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know. I passed the I passed the captain.
that's
I passed the captain
unbelievably.
just thinking because I didn't have enough instant or sorceries for the deck. If you look at the deck that I had, you know, it didn't have a lot.
Would you take over it? The Goblin
I
Picker?
No. I actually took a Sulphur Springs because at that point I had 2 something else I knew I wanted to splash into black. And I thought the splash would be easier. And my opponent, I knew the person to my left because they passed me a solid blue card, wasn't in blue. And so I said, that's pretty good. We're shorted here. I think it might get around. Like sometimes you'll see rafts like pretty late. Sometimes you'll see Balmores pretty late. And the person to my right ended up hating it because they just don't like playing against the card. So they weren't even in the colors. They just straight up hated it. I was like, oh, okay. So I wouldn't have known whether or not it would have got back to me or not.
Okay, for my last 2 things, I tried to put cards that were like contentious in this. That like just to prove the point that like necessarily like a strong card isn't necessarily like a signal. It could just be you're just getting a strong card. It could be like a signal that like a certain color is open, but not necessarily the archetype, which I think is more important. I think archetypes are more important than generically strong cards and colors.
In this set.
Yep. So I'll just pass it on to Andrew. I've been going for it.
I mean, really, it just comes down for me just like looking on the macro scale is color. And
the
then
macro, micro. I like that. I like that and like description of it. That was pretty solid.
Yeah, because I think that's the two things you do. Because you really like, we're so advanced here. Like we're already past color, and we have to do art. We're to archetypes, right? But for the person coming in and just starting out, like it's got to start with color first, and then go into archetypes. Because not everybody's going to have the intimate knowledge of like all the archetypes and have them memorized to a certain point. And I think it wasn't really accessible to the person just coming in. I mean, that's a full what the essence of a signal is to really say to the person to your left or to your right, I'm in these colors, stay out of them. Or like, I have not passed you a single black card. That's got to show you that I'm in black. Pass me all the black stuff, and we're going to have a good draft together. Or I'm passing you a really strong green, or I'm passing you really strong cards that go to an aggro deck. Ooh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I probably want to do that. Or with like in the case of like Ryan passing me an extinguished delight at that point, he's like, I want you to be in black. He's telling me by that his deck probably is not base black because of the double pip, and he's telling me he's probably not playing black because it's a solid removal spell in black, right?
I mean, they were like picks 3 and 4 for you, picks like 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 for me, right? So like picks that early too are just not great signs because you always have uncommons and rares in a deck, and those cards could be significantly better than those other cards.
I think just like it's the sending and receiving too, right? So the receiving on pack one, pick one, obviously no signals to receive. When you're passing, remember just kind of the big power level cards you put out there. And then in pack two, look at the cards, assess them in your personal power level, and just arrange the cards and say, okay, this is pretty good. This is on a high level scale here. Look at the color, look at the archetype. And then shuffle and passing too. Goodness gracious, don't give your opponent free information about your thought process.
I like to not shuffle.
I think it's correct to shuffle.
I feel like it's always
I know it is. I just like to not do it.
You're like debating between usually the 2 top cards of the deck.
Yeah.
And to not
I don't
shuffle.
do it.
And then so like in packs 3 and 4, I'm looking for those double colored cards because that's a pretty strong signal that they're not base that color. Normally the double colored cards are a little bit stronger on the power level scale. And then you're looking for those dual colored cards that are the signal posts in formats like your Battle More Mage, which is a pretty hard signal that like, okay, red blue is really strong. That's a really strong card in red blue. They're not in that archetype. They're probably not in those colors if they're passing something like that in the 3-4. And then the 5-6, you've seen a lot of stuff at that point. At that point, you could pretty much assess what your person who is passing to you on the left is on your left is passing to you, and probably the colors that they're in, and more likely the signals that you sent out as well. Like if I'm getting, as an example of this, in pack 4 or 5, if I'm getting like an Ancient Silverback, which is a triple colored green card, I could safely assess that probably two of the 4 people that went through are not in green at all. Like it's a very strong card, and that's an easy card to see where you have to be base green to play that. It's a triple green card. And then so in packs 2, it's flipped around. So now you get to see if your signaling really paid off. If you put the person to your left in those colors, you should be reaping the rewards of the color that you cut them off of at that point, and it should just be flowing to you. Or you've realized that they were in those colors all along, and now it's just going to be an uphill battle on pack 2, and then you get them on pack 3. But you should have a good read by pack 3 as well, and just play accordingly. Start building to your deck at that point probably in the later is pack 2, and then just look at your picks thus far, and see how to prioritize what cogs you need in the wheel, and just remember your macro and micros.
Yep.
I like the micro thing.
I do too, but I have some very different kind of taste than you on some of these pick orders. So I think obviously pack one pick one, there's no signals because you just open the pack.
Yeah.
So when you open pack one, pick one, I think it's best to identify the 3 best cards you're passing. Because those are going to shape the 3 people to your left's drafts, really. The top 3 best cards that you're going to be passing, you identify those and say, and there's tendencies of people to, like Roby, like he's going to lean like towards dual lands, or there's dual lands, like consider that. You know what I mean? Like he'll take cards over dual lands, but that like if it's a weaker pack, he's probably gonna take the dual land. But so the more you play with people, the more tendencies they have. But in a vacuum, like on arena, whatever, that's not the case. But anyway, identify the top 3 cards that you're passing, and think like, I would take this card, this card, and this card. And the reason you want to identify, I think 3 or more, is because you don't know the first or second card those people drafted. But like you generally know like what the best cards in this pack are and what colors I'm putting them into. It's like, for example, if you open a bomb rare and you pass like an Extinguish the Light and the 4 mana flash enchantment that exile something that costs white, and Weatherseed Treaty, like that those are probably going to be like the next 3 cards taken. You don't know which of those 3 people are going to take those cards, but that most likely they're going to be the next 3 cards taken. And then you kind of be mindful of your next 3 cards like every time you pass. And when you're passing a card that like goes into the color that you're drafting, that's when you need to be cautious and make sure that like the card you're passing that's like the color you want to be in later in the deck, like later in the pack, is not like a huge signal to move into your same archetype, your same draft deck. I think people get a little bit caught up in the weeds when they're being conscious of what they pass, especially in person, and they hate draft to their detriment.
Yeah.
I think there are some cards that it's appropriate to hate draft, but I think there's like approximately 5 of those cards in this format. It's often better to give the person to your left a strong card that puts them on a rail than to hate draft the card and send them a bad signal and give them a card that you want for the long run of the draft. So, for example, the Balmore Battle Mage Captain situation.
Yeah.
If I hate draft that and send, you a pack, and you end up with a card that would really slot into my deck, that can completely derail your draft and put you into my colors or my even whole deck. You never know, to where it's just not worth it to do. It's better to pass your opponent that that Battle Mage Captain and let him take the blue-red deck if you're not at all interested in the blue-red deck.
Mm-hmm.
And
if
just
you're
like
not
let
seeing the
them
pieces,
do it.
right?
Yeah. Or like early on even. But yeah.
So do you not subscribe to hate drafting at all?
I think there are some cards that you kind of need a hate draft, but yeah, mostly no. I think mostly it's better to me to put your opponent where you want them. Like, if I pass you a card and I can guarantee, especially like picks, 3, 4, 5. If I pass you a card that's gonna make you go like, what? What are you guys doing? And you just slam that and you just go, and I put you there because like it that progresses what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to do, to me, is more important than stopping 1 out of 12 people from doing what they want to do.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'd rather my deck be better, especially in those crucial picks 4 through 7 of pack 1 are, to me, some of the most crucial picks of the draft. Picks 4 through 7, and then realizing the wheels. You know what I mean? And so to waste one of those picks hate drafting, it's okay to like draft the Balmore and speculate it with intent to move in. But it's not okay to say, like, I'm just drafting this because I don't want that guy to have it in pack 1 ever. I don't think it's ever correct to do that. I don't think there's a single card that I would hate draft pack 1 without the like possibility of moving in. Do you guys agree with that or disagree?
I fully agree with that. That goes into what I was saying of like just taking a card because it's generically strong and not building towards like a real deck, or like it kind of just fucks you and it ends up just being bad usually.
I mean, there are cards that are just generically strong that
Yeah,
slot into
yeah.
decks, right? Like a lightning strike. Are you ever cutting that from a deck that has red in it?
Probably not.
Yeah, okay.
Probably not, right? Like it's, but like, yeah.
You know, those are cards where you're just like, crap. You know, so I feel bad when I pass a lightning strike because I just, especially if I'm in red or something, and I took something over, and I'm just like, oh, I just know it slots somewhere into there. But I don't know. Sometimes hating cards is, especially if you just had a really bad experience with the card. Sometimes you just don't want to. Just love the security. Of
That's wrong.
Yeah,
That's
no,
wrong.
it's better to have a symbiotic relationship, especially with the person that you're directly passing to like it's better to like set them up
For success.
unless you're like
If it means, like-
absolutely terrified of that person. Like if you're like absolutely terrified, like this guy's just better than me, and like if I give him this card, he's gonna beat me with it no matter what I do.
I just think it's the card in general sometimes where it's like, oh man, I just lost that card so badly.
Yeah,
The
that's,
thing is,
that's using
sacrifice.
anecdotal
There's
evidence to shape
There's
your stuff. Like it's
sacrificing.
just you're sacrificing a lot, and that really confuses the person to your left and
Mhm.
like messes up their signals. And if their draft goes off rails, your draft's gonna go off rails. Pack 2.
Pack 2, but pack 3 you're just shoring up things, right? At that point, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
my deck. It doesn't really matter. Do you feel like signaling matters at all in pack 3?
No, but by the time pack 3 rolls around, if you really want to hate draft a card in pack 3, that's fine. Like, but pack 3, you should really be reaping rewards of your pack 1 and 2. Like pack 3 is really the like you don't really get the payoffs as much. You might get some because like if you're truly in the correct deck for you, people will be passing them.
Yeah.
But like pack 3 is where you're just getting just value after value. You're just super like when your pack 3 is smooth and you're just like happy about every card you get, that's how you know your deck's going to be good. In pack 3 when you're like scrounging and taking bad cards, that's how you know like you did not navigate the draft correctly. And part of that navigation is the hate drafting and the conscience of what you pass. But it's always important to be conscious of what you pass. And I think it's like for newer players, it's like harder to say like you should remember every card you pass and like identify what you think is going to wheel. And
I think it's
The
just your
top 3,
personal.
I think, is
The
useful.
top 3, I think, is the way to go, and just
That's a useful piece of advice for sure.
it's a good start for sure. Like eventually you want to identify wheels and like be on the lookout for those. And so I'm going to kind of go through and say like what I think each pick you should really be like considering besides just the top 3 cards that you're passing. So I think pack 2, there's no signal there. Like pick 2. Sorry, pack 1, pick 2. There's no signal there. No matter what card you're passed, unless it's like a Wingmantle Chaplain or a Shouldred, it's not a signal. There could be a foil. There could be like so much other stuff that's better than the card you're passed that's in the same colors as that card. Even if you get past a Tatiova, that's not a signal. Pick 2. Pick 3, I think Tatiova might be a signal because I don't think there's very many packs. Sorry, pick 3. I keep saying pack 3, but pick 3, Tatiova might be a signal because there's not very many packs that have 2 cards better than Tatiova. You know what I mean? There's not very many packs. There's no packs that have 2 cards better than Wingmantle Chaplain. So pick 3, it's not really any strong signals unless you just get like a card that you're just like completely shocked about. Pick 4 is false signals here. People start to pick up signals here, but like an Extinguish the Light pick 4 does not mean that black is open.
Not a signal. Or a lightning strike. Or a
lightning strike. Or even a Balmor pack 4. Like there could be a better blue-red card. There could have even been like another Balmor in the pack. Like pick 4 is false signals, and people will really tend to move into like a pick 4 signal and you'll get baited because like pick 4 to me is like there's preference on a color. Like there might be 2 very good green cards, Weather Seed Treaty and Mossbeard Ancient, and that's like a preference. You know what I mean? If you take Weather Seed Treaty, those both slot into the same deck, but it's a preference which one you'd prefer to take that early in a draft. So I think pick 4 is false signals, and picks 5 through 7 are some of your most reliable signals. Pick 5 if you're starting to see, clear signs, and you can think about this in terms of color, or you can think about this in terms of archetypes. So like a color signal would be Extinguish the Light, would be Lightning Strike, would be Tolarian Geyser.
That would
An
be
archetype, what's
like
up?
a micro, right? That would be like a micro.
That'd be like a macro, like a color signal.
Macro.
Yeah. And then a micro signal would be like Gaia's Might, Keldon Strike Team.
Yep.
Balmor is a pretty big signal.
Tolarian Terror.
Talarian Terror, yeah. Any cards that just slot into a certain deck are like more that are payoffs. I would say payoffs are like micro signals, and then it's like generally removal is like a macro signal. Like removal doesn't say your opponent's not in this color. It just says like the color's fairly open on the table. Like 2 people to your right are not that color. You know what I mean? And then picks 9 and 10 are huge. If you can remember like what wheeled, if you can kind of like think about, and I know this is like super advanced, right? Like it's really hard to remember all 15 cards in your first pack.
I think those 3 this is where it really pays off with just having your 3 key that you remembered.
Yeah. If any of those 3 key came back, that should be a huge sign, because then you know, like because you identified those as the top 3 cards of the pack, and no one took one of them. You need to move into that, even if it's pick 9. It's time to move in. But if you look at some cards and you say like what wheeled, if I know it's hard to remember, but you can do it eventually once you know a set. But like there's certain cards like Gaia's Might or I don't know, Wrath, which usually will never wheel. But Maria's Outrider could wheel, right? Pick 9. That's a huge signal. That's kind of like not really, people will call it a payoff, but to me it's not like a huge payoff, but it's like a key piece for like a deck. And those cogs in the wheel. And then if you navigate, like it's okay to flip flop and navigate picks 9 and 10. And I know a lot of or pack 1. It's okay to flip flop and figure it out. But also a caution there is the more you like flip flop, the more bad information you give to the next guy. So like the more in symbiosis you can be with the guy to your left and right, like the guy to your right's passing you a signal, you move into that. You pass the guy to your left a signal, he moves into that. You're going to have a better deck because of that. Whereas if you hate draft those cards, your deck's going to be bad and their deck's going to be bad. You know what I mean? But then packs 2 and 3, you get rewarded. You reap the rewards. Pick pack 2 not as much as pack 3 because like you can never account for like what the people to your left had before you pass them your packs. Like there's some cards that people, and I'm not saying this is correct to do, but boy, no, everyone's people. Like I'll do this sometimes. Even there's some cards that you can get and you just want it to work. You just want to make it happen. Like sometimes you'll just pick one of Balmor Battle Captain, and you just want to do the red blue deck, and because that's what you feel like doing today. And that's not the right way to do it. But like the person to your left can always be doing that. No matter what you pass them, they're going blue red. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like pack 2 will be like an eye opener if the person to your left really, you read your signals and did what you anticipated them to do, or at least, the 2 people to the left or whatever. And if they didn't, that's okay. You're not in the wrong set, but you can draft more like non-basics and supporting splash cards to support pack 3.
Pack 2 is usually like the most important pack, I think. That's like, there are cards that I think you can only get in pack 2. Picks like 1 through 8. That like, if you set up for it, you can like reap the rewards of that. And like, you're only going to get them in pack 2, right? Because there could be someone on your other side cutting those cards. Like, that's like one of the most important packs.
But what I'm saying is, I think if you read your signals correctly, it's okay for pack 2 to kind of dud sometimes, as long as there's still other stuff you can do to support your deck idea. Because, like, no matter how, like, packs 1 and 3 are, like, the most important because there's 2 of them. Like, that rotation is the most important rotation.
Reliable, right?
Yeah, because you're going to get the most cards out of that, pass and left rotation.
Yep.
So packs 1 and 3 are the cards that you have to set up for. In pack 2, if you have to force, you have to force. But like ideally,
pack 2 is the best forcing pack, right?
Yeah. Pack 2, you're just like disappointed in everyone to your left that they didn't do what you like put them in. You know what I mean? But if that happens, that's fine. But that's where you get like dual lands and splash cards, which is fine.
Yeah. Pack 2 usually for me is like where I get the pieces. The pieces.
Yeah, because you're taking but that's because our philosophy is like so different.
Yeah.
You're taking the dual lands pack 1.
Yep.
And
occasionally, right?
Being open, right? And by pack 1, I've already found my lane. And pack 2, I'm looking for more of the supporting cards. So that way, pack 3, I can like get the rest of my deck.
Yeah.
But that's
like the ideal way. I have drafts like that sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And sometimes it happens. Like sometimes you just want to take. Like that'll happen with me too. Like I just want to take. There's no card good enough to like warp my draft, so I just want to take cards that I'm going to be able to play in my deck. And that's why you hear people say like those double pips or the 2 colored cards are worse pack 1 pick 1 because if you take a single colored card or a colorless card, it's way more likely to go in your deck. So like you draft like a way safer version. Like you draft safely. Like pack 1, Roby.
Yeah.
You take cards that you know you're gonna play.
Yeah.
Pack 1 picks like 1 through 6. Like you're taking lands, you're taking single colored cards. Like you might, if there's a bomb, you'll take it. But you're more like, I want to put these high picks in my deck. Where I'm more like taking risks and willing to throw cards away if that's not what's open.
Yeah, and it works better in different formats, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So as the 1-2 drafter this week, I will introduce Ryan as our fearless leader, apparently, with an asterisk, as a solid second place.
Oh man! Oh, you really. For someone that got alpha on a
second
2-1 week,
list.
for someone that got alpha on a 2-1 week, you're quick to throw those asterisks.
Yeah, you guys gave me a lot of asterisks. So I'll definitely give you a 1 for sure.
Yeah, we'll call it a Roby asterisk, and it's fine. We'll understand what that means. But no, I did get second. On a 6-0 draft. So. The last 2 weeks I've been to Andrew's right, and 1 week I was like, I'm gonna be nice to you today, and he did good. He got alpha, Then the next week I was like, you know what? You don't get out fun today, and he did bad, And then this week I sit down. He said basically the same thing to me, like, you don't get out fun today. Like I'm just gonna. I don't think he ended up actually doing it, but he said it. Like I'm just gonna, cut you, and you're not gonna get anything you want. And I 6-0'd, 3-0 in matches, 6-0 in games. And I did, you're always scared when you go to the final round and you have to play the guy that passed you your entire deck. But it worked out. It worked out, guys. It can be done. And I also want to praise Gaiasmite and the little green domain aggro pile. It's just good. It just wins games. That's all it does. It steals, it wins games. It's just a good card, and you're never going to table it if I'm at your table. It's never going to happen. So don't even try. Don't try. You got to take it, pick 5, 6, 7, because you're not going to see it pick 8+.
Lots of people love the red green. Everyone wants to be in red green.
Bro, I was Bant aggro.
The worst color to be aggro. Yeah. Not the worst for sure.
Maybe. But it could be argued.
It's not the best aggro color for sure.
Flyers.